Hi, boys and girls. Miss Crossland here. And today we're going to talk about your narrative writing and we're going to learn how to do a hook. So, yesterday you worked on figuring out your story, and you were supposed to tell your story the very beginning, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then the ending. And so today we're going to take that story that you told on Seesaw and we're going to write it. So the first part of our story, we are going to go to our Google slide, and I have the Google slide up behind. So you're going to name your story. And if you don't have the title yet, that's okay. You can always do that at the end. But you should put your name in here. So it says written by your name. You're just going to click and put your name because you are the author. So the first slide that we're going to do, and we're not going to go ahead. So today, the only thing you have to do is put your name, and then we're going to do our hook. So I'm going to tell you about the hook. A hook is something that we use at the beginning of a story to get the reader's attention. So just like if you were going fishing and you threw a hook in the ocean, you would grab a fish. Well, we're doing the same thing, only instead of getting fish, we're going to get readers, people that want to read our story because it's so interesting at the beginning. So there's a couple different ways to do a hook, and there's actually a lot of ways, but today we're just going to look at three. So I'm going to give you three choices, and I want you to use one. Every time you write a narrative, you're going to use a hook and get the attention. So the three that we're going to talk about today are action, lead, onomatopoeia, and asking a question. So the first one that we're doing is action lead, and I'm going to share with you a couple of books. This first one that I'm going to share with you is called The Shortcut by Donald Cruz. It's a great book, and hopefully you've heard it maybe today with your teacher. So this starts out, we looked, we listened, we decided to take the shortcut home. So those are all actions, things that they did. They're looking and they're listening, and then they decided. And that's something when it starts out, when Donald Cruz starts his book out like that, it piques your interest. You think, what are they going to do next? What are they talking about? And it's something that gets your interest. That's hooking us. Another book I want to show you that does the same thing is by Eve Bunting, and this one is called A Day's Work by Eve Bunting. And when she starts off with this. Francisco stood in the parking lot with his grandfather and the other men. It was the first time he'd been there. A truck cruised along, slowed. The driver held up 3 fingers. Brick Lane, I need 3 men, he called. 5 men jumped in the back. Only 3, the driver said, and 2 had to get out. So in this story, he starts with action again. You see that they're standing in the parking lot, and then a truck comes up, they jump in the back, and then they jump out. So it's action, and we kind of wonder what's going on. So the other thing that this Eve Bunting does is she introduces the setting and the characters. And this one does a particularly good job of that. So you're also going to introduce your setting and characters. So you're going to do your hook, and then you're going to introduce the people that are in your story and where it takes place. So you're not going to say, my story is about my mom and dad and my cousin. You're not going to put it out like that. You're going to just incorporate it into your story. So the way that Eve Bunting does this is that she names the people. She talks about Francisco. She talks about the grandfather. And then she says where they are. They're in a parking lot. It looks like they're looking for work. So she puts it in the story without blatantly spelling it out. And I want you guys to give that a try. So we're second graders now, and we're going to write books like that. So when we're in our narrative, that's what we're going to do. We're going to use a hook and then start with introducing the setting and the character. Now, onomatopoeia is another way that we can hook our readers. Onomatopoeia is a sound, and it's something that it's just any sound that you can think of. So if you break something, you might write crash. If you're walking on a wooden floor or somebody's walking and you hear creak, creak, You could start with creek, creek. And those words that make that sound, those are onomatopoeias. Onomatopoeia is also the sound that animals make. So it could be a chirp, chirp, or ruff, ruff. And those words are onomatopoeias. When we start with an onomatopoeia, that's another hook. That's another way to gain the attention. I'm going to share with you the example that Ms. Crossan wrote, that I wrote. And the first thing I did was I started with a onomatopoeia on my writing. So this is what I did. Clank, shoosh. We heard the plane's wheels drop to be ready for landing. I looked over at my two daughters, Taylor and Jordan, and we all smiled, our eyes crinkling over the tops of our masks. We had landed in Iowa. So this one, I started with an onomatopoeia, and that's what it sounds like to me when the wheels drop out of a plane. You might have a different idea of what it sounds like, and you could use different words. It doesn't have to be. It's whatever you want to do because it's your writing. And then I introduced the characters in the setting. So I introduced my daughters. So you know that the story is going to be about both of my daughters, Taylor and Jordan, and myself. And we were on a plane going somewhere and we landed in Iowa. So you'll find out what happens next, but it kind of gets your attention. So the last way that the last hook that we're going to talk about is asking a question. So I could have started my story with, have you ever been on an airplane? Well, I recently was. And then this is what happened or whatever. I can start it out like that. And then I can say, I went on an airplane when I went to Iowa recently. So that's another way that you can start out your story with a question. So if you're going to talk about maybe the time that you went and got the biggest ice cream and then it dropped on the ground, you could start out with, did you ever really want ice cream or have a feeling that you just had to have something specific to eat? Like any kind of question like that that you want to write, it has to go with your story. So, and I know you guys are probably really good at asking questions, so you could start it out like that. So when you're writing your hook, remember to use either the action, onomatopoeia, or asking a question, and remember to put your characters and your settings somehow in that first little box. And that's all you have to do today. We're only writing in this one, so don't go ahead. Tomorrow we'll be going on to the next box, and we're going to be writing the beginning of the story. Okay. You guys are remembering the story that you wrote yesterday, thinking about it a lot, and thinking about what you want to say. All right, get to writing, guys. I can't wait to read what you've done.